We tackled two iconic Disney parks in one weekend. Was it worth it? I'll let you know what worked, what didn't, and what I learned on my first solo Walt Disney World vacation.
You're listening to Castle Talk Radio. We're live on the airwaves with Becca and Jessica. Now let's jump into this week's episode.
What's up, everybody? I'm Jessica from the Happiest Blog on Earth, and I am your host today during one of our solo series. Now, Becca will be back next time, but if you remember a few episodes back, Becca kind of coached me through a trip that I was planning to Walt Disney World, and there were a lot of things that made this interesting. One of the things that was interesting and challenging is that we only had a weekend to handle Walt Disney World. And thinking back on that episode, we talked about a lot of options because I was in really early stages of planning. We talked about what parks we might want to choose from, if we wanted to do park hopping, and a little bit of strategies into each park. So I'm here to tell you about that trip, how it went, what I learned, what we did, and maybe what I would have done differently. I also want to include some things that I think are really important for visitors who are really used to Disneyland Resort and how that worked out in a Walt Disney World trip. What things I liked, what things I didn't like. This is a really great episode. I hope that you'll stick around and listen to. Okay, so first of all, we had decided to head to Walt Disney World because we were meeting some friends. We only had a weekend to do it. It wasn't the end all be all Walt Disney World trip. Like you're planning this epic vacation with your family and you want to do everything, see as much as possible, and just make it a really classic Disney World vacation. So we knew our limitations going into it. We knew that we only had a weekend. We knew that we had 2 park days. Yeah, seriously. And we were going on Saturday and Sunday. So these are things that people kind of tell you not to do when you're going to Walt Disney World. But I think our mindset going into it, knowing that we were there to meet up with friends, to have a good time with our friends who live across the country. And the goal was to make memories with them at Disney. So it wasn't necessarily like planning this trip that we had saved up for years and years, and this was the only time we were going to go. So you might fall into this category at one time or another. And I have to say that the trip turned out so fantastic that I actually wouldn't hesitate to do a weekend trip to Walt Disney World again. And I am on the West Coast, the west part of the country. So this was like a full day of travel there, a full day of travel back, and a really tight timeline. One thing that worked for us, and the reason that it worked so well, is that we were 4 adults. Now, the other 2 were almost 18, so considering 4 adults. And we all knew the game plan. We all knew that we were going into this to have a good time, to make some memories, and that we weren't going to accomplish everything. It was actually my son's first Walt Disney World experience ever, and only my second time. And the first time I was taken there as a part of a hosted trip with Disney and Getaway Today. So that trip was completely different than this. That trip was a press trip where they took us and they handled all the bookings, they handled all the rides, schedulings, and we just literally went along for the ride. So this was the first time that I dug in and planned the trip myself as a Disneyland expert, applying some of those things that I know from Disneyland over to Walt Disney World, and then really learning a lot of new things. Now, I do want to shout out to a few people that really helped me with this. So first, my co-host, Becca. And if you want to go back and listen to the episode that we talked about Walt Disney World, and we actually have a few because she's been a lot more than I have. So Becca definitely helped me out both on the podcast and, during just personal phone calls, personal Marco Polo chats, things like that. I also relied heavily on the website Mouse Hacking. It's my first experience using that website because they cover Walt Disney World and I didn't need that information. But I really found their information super helpful. I also used WDW Prep School. I also used Disney Deciphered Podcast. That is co hosted by some friends of mine, one being Leslie at Trips with Tykes. So she hosts the Disney Deciphered podcast. And then she also has information on her website, Trips with Tykes. So if you are looking for Walt Disney World, like take some notes there. And another one, let's see, what was another one? No, I think that was all of them that I relied on super heavily to kind of take notes and go through things to just organize this trip. And there was a lot of note taking and there was a lot of things that happened. But let's get into like what we actually did and the strategies and what helped and what worked. So we flew in on a Friday. And that first day, we got there around dinner time and we went to Disney Springs. Now, this is perfect to do on an arrival day or departure day when you're going to Walt Disney World, as well as Disneyland. We always talk about going to downtown Disney. So it's the equivalent. Disney Springs actually used to be called Downtown Disney over on the East Coast, but it's now Disney Springs. So it's very similar vibe, except for it's huge. It's much bigger than Disneyland, and that is going to be a general theme that we find at Walt Disney World. Everything's a lot bigger. So we did Disney Springs, walked around, did a little bit of shopping, and decided where we wanted to eat. So we decided to eat at the T-Rex restaurant. Now, if you've ever been to Rainforest Cafe, they used to have that in Anaheim. It's just really an over-the-top restaurant with like theming inside, animatronics, lighting, sound. This is a busy place. Like there's a lot going on. A lot of people like to go there for birthdays, special celebrations. But it was really cool. So if you're looking for something that's like an entertainment plus option and it's lively, it is loud, that T-Rex place was really cool. And they have a wide variety of menu items. So like American type of food, all the way from like burgers and stuff like that to also like some healthier options like some grain bowls and things like that. So we were all able to find something that we enjoyed eating there. And it was a good atmosphere for the group that we had. If you're wanting like a super romantic date night or something, that's not going to be it because it's so busy. It's so crazy. But they have different themed rooms. And not our first room, the place where they sat us in was like the aquarium themed room, which if you are looking for romance, I feel like that was the most like romantic spot. It had just different aquariums all around. It was really pretty to look at. They have like an ice cave. That one's a lot busier because the bathrooms are in that area. So you're going to have people coming in and out the whole time. But a really cool place, very similar vibe to Rainforest Cafe. We had a great time there. And there's tons of other things you can do at Disney Springs if you're looking for more activities throughout the day. So that night, which was Friday night, we went back to our hotel and we actually stayed off property. That's a big thing that I haven't mentioned yet because we were considering on property, off property, and that is a whole episode in itself. But for this particular trip, off property worked for us because we were looking for an apartment style suite where we had like a living room, a kitchen, and then one bedroom and bathroom on one side, and then another bedroom and bathroom on the other side. And since I also planned this with a friend, we kind of split up our tasks and what we needed to do. And she handled the lodging and I handled the tickets. So you know where I always suggest to get tickets. And that is getawaytoday.com/castle talk. And that is where we got our tickets. We also priced out hotels and things like that. But with the setup that we wanted, this worked out a lot better for us. So I was really glad that my friend was able to set up that for us. And it really was not far at all. Everybody says you got to stay on property at Disney World. I did stay on property last time, but there are certain situations that it's going to work out just fine for you. You do get a lot of perks for staying on property, and I'll get into that in a second. But our off property site was not too far at all from like Pop Century, one of the Disney properties. Like we drove past it each time. It was really close. We opted for rideshare because we had adults. We don't have to worry about car seats and those things. So we did Uber and Lyft from the airport to our hotel and our hotel to the Disney properties each day. That took a little bit of learning because there's different places that they're going to drop you off. For example, Magic Kingdom, they can't drop you off at the front of Magic Kingdom. You have to go somewhere else to be able to then take transportation into Magic Kingdom. The cool thing about doing rideshare is that if you type in that you want to be taken to Magic Kingdom, it's automatically going to update that address to the specific place that Disney allows for rideshare to drop you off. So that made it super easy. All right, so first day in the parks. Now, one thing that's different about Walt Disney World is you can actually book some of your lightning lanes prior to getting to the parks. I felt like that was such a huge headache. It was not just a headache, but a lot of pressure. There's a specific time when you're staying on property that you can book your lightning lanes, and a specific time when you're staying off property. And as you guessed, off property gets last choice, along with annual pass holders or anyone else like that. So I was using, Thrill Data. That's another one website that gave me the info, gave me the data of like what lightning lanes were already booked up so that when it came my turn 3 days in advance, I could be prepared for what I wanted to book. So 3 days before if you're off property, 7 days before if you're on property. Now check the time, check the dates before you book your trip because that's going to be really important. And those are the dates right now. And it's 7 a.m. Eastern time. So for me, it was not 7 a.m. It was in the wee hours of the morning that I had to get up and book these. And that's why I wanted to strategize and plan which rides I wanted to book my lightning lanes for beforehand because I'm getting up in the morning. I actually just had like a post-it note right by my bed, had my alarm, grabbed the post-it note and purchased lightning lane for my tickets, everyone that was going, and then booked those lightning lanes. So being 3 days in advance, I was stressed and worried, like, am I going to be able to get anything? And again, the websites and the podcasts that I listed before earlier in this episode, those are ones that helped me choose what rides and lightning lanes were going to be most beneficial to our party and our strategies for that day. So I booked those. I was able to get what I wanted as well as purchase individual lightning lane for the rides that they had it for. So in our case, this time for Magic Kingdom, that was Tron and Seven Dwarfs Mine Train. By the time that I got to book, Seven Dwarfs Mine Train was already sold out. So that wasn't an option to buy lightning lane single pass, but we knew that we could do standby for the regular line for that as well. So keep that in mind. Again, a lot of stress. And I was just like, is this going to be worth doing? Is this actually helpful? All the things. And of course, at Disneyland, we book our lightning lanes the day of when we walk in the parks, and we're only booking one. At Disney World right now, you're booking 3. And there are some nuances that go along with that. But I was able to get most things that I wanted in a decent time frame. And the cool thing about Disney World is that your time frames are locked in if you want them to be, but people continuously change plans, especially when they get in the park that day. So you are able to modify your plans, and you can be looking at your app anytime you want up to your trip and on the day of. The modifications came in so handy for us. Friday night, like late in the night, we actually had a medical emergency that we ended up in the emergency room nearby. Now, that's a whole other story that I probably won't get into here, but because that little thing went wrong and everyone's okay and everyone's good and everyone was cleared to go to the parks the next day. But that was like way late Friday night. Ended up in the emergency room. And again, everyone's fine, thank goodness. But we didn't get released from the emergency room till 3:30 in the morning. And at that point, we knew we still had Magic Kingdom and it was still something we wanted to do. So Magic Kingdom opens a few hours after we got from the emergency room, right? And that just wasn't going to happen. This is the one thing that I loved about Walt Disney World that I did not expect at all. I was able to regroup with our party and say, hey, we need some rest. Let's see. We'll wake up at about 10, get a few hours in, and see how we feel about going to the parks late instead of doing rope drop. And I was able to modify those lightning lanes right then and there before I went to bed so that I could push the times out to later in the day. Most people want their lightning lanes in the morning so that they can continuously get more lightning lanes. So having that advanced booking option actually worked out so well for us. One, you already know what you have booked and know that you can get more later, even if you're going at rope drop and everything's going just perfectly. But two, if plans change, it's flexible. I feel like at Disneyland Resort, if you are not in there for rope drop and you're trying to do all the attractions that are the most popular and use the maximum amount of lightning lanes, if you're not in there for rope drop, you're really setting yourself up for not the best day. At Disney World, we were able to modify and actually get the rest that we needed. And we actually ended up getting to the parks around lunchtime on Saturday to Magic Kingdom. And guess what? We got every lightning lane that we wanted to. That was important to our group, and then some. And we also were able to wait in the standby line for Seven Dwarfs Mine Train. And our wait time was 40 minutes. That was the longest line we waited in all day. Most every other line was 20 minutes or less. And I'm talking more on the less side because we had lightning lanes for those. It was incredible. And we ended up staying till after fireworks, did a couple more rides, and then left just a little bit before closing time. Now, you guys, there is still so much more to get into this, but I'm going to cover Epcot in like 2 minutes. So, Epcot, since we had such a great experience not rope dropping Magic Kingdom, we said, let's also not rope drop Epcot. And our options there with the pre-booked lightning lanes weren't as good, weren't as solid as Magic Kingdom. My return times were already later, and I was pretty disappointed at that when I first booked those 3 days in advance. But now understanding that we didn't have to rope drop and we can actually get some rest, it worked out so perfectly. The only thing that was crazy for us with Epcot, and this could be with any park, was we had purchased Lightning Lane Single Pass for Guardians of the Galaxy Cosmic Rewind, and you really don't get a chance to modify those single passes. They're pretty locked in. And again, this was in spring break, a peak travel time where everybody said the parks were super busy. Have to say that I found the parks to be very comfortable, very manageable, did not feel crowded to me at all. All right, so we weren't able to modify that single pass for Guardians, and we also had dining reservations on either side. Like our group was splitting up. We had a dining reservation before Guardians and a dining reservation right after Guardians. So that was tricky. The thing that, and it was nothing that I wanted to give up. I wanted to keep all of those things. And I tried modifying dining reservations. Nothing was working. So it was like back to back to back to back. And Epcot is massive. It takes a long time to get places, especially if you're going all the way up to the front of the park to ride Cosmic Rewind and then to the back of the park for a dining reservation or wherever you're going. That was a struggle. We ended up kind of splitting up, having some people go to check in at our reservation, which we were 40 minutes late for. I mean, not exactly. Like our first people that went there got there like 10 minutes after the dining reservation because some of us were still riding Cosmic Rewind. And then we had to walk like 30 minutes to get to the restaurant because Epcot is so big. We did more steps at Epcot than we did at Magic Kingdom. And we really didn't do a ton of back and forth. This was just like our big Epcot loop and then one back and forth to our dining. Anyway, so they checked us in and said like the rest of our party is coming, but they're delayed from their Lightning Lane single pass. And I have to say that I've heard you could show up late to your Lightning Lane single pass, but the way our day was planned, this actually ended up being just fine. So they were really accommodating at the restaurant. I don't know if that was just a one-time thing, but it's not something that I found at Disneyland can do very often or very well. It's usually like you've got to be at your dining reservation or you're probably going to lose that. They were super accommodating. When all is said and done, we were 40 minutes late for that dining reservation, and it turned out totally fine. So, again, with Epcot, we did all the things we wanted to do. I did one of their concert dining packages as well, which was super fun. And with all that stuff going on, we were also late to our concert. And we thought, shoot, maybe we won't even get our cool seat that we paid for, because I don't know how this works. Well, sure enough, we were still like headed right up. We had second row because that was the spot that was reserved, first and second row. Had a great time at the concert. I mean, packed so much stuff in this weekend, and it was fantastic. I would absolutely do it again. I am looking forward to like taking the rest of my kids because now my son is the only kid of mine that has been to Walt Disney World. And it was just a great time, you guys. I say that all of the time and effort that I put into learning how to do Walt Disney World and just choosing the right lightning lanes and learning that modification is key with those lightning lanes and to keep adding more slots for later on, it was worth all the time. During that buildup of doing it, I thought, is this worth my time? Is this worth the stress? I thought it was so stressful at the time, but now I'm like, you know what? This is actually a lot better because you're doing it at home. You're not doing it when you're in the parks, like at Disneyland, where you're like, I couldn't get this lightning lane. Now our trip is ruined. Of course, we want to have a positive attitude with everything, but I think being able to adjust, like for example, that we didn't get the Seven Dwarfs Mine Train single pass before the trip, I was able to regroup and talk with our group and say, hey, this part didn't work out. And we were all able to be like, that's no problem. We'll just watch the wait time and we'll do standby whenever we feel like it. And we'll grab some snacks and drinks and we'll get in line and we'll have a good time talking. Having that option right then and there, like beforehand, was so helpful. And I imagine that that would be really helpful with kids too, little kids. If you're like, these are the rides we're already planning on going on. We have this lightning lane pass. It's going to be a lot of fun. This one, we're going to wait in the regular line and just to kind of prepare everyone for that. I think there's some really good components of Disney World trips that we don't have at Disneyland and vice versa. But I hope you enjoyed my little trip report. Again, we could probably talk about this so much, but I bet some of those stories will also come out later on as we go back to covering Disney World throughout Castle Talk Radio. But of course, if you want to get those tickets for any Disney trip, Disneyland, Disney World, Alani, going on a Disney cruise, we would love your support by purchasing your vacation packages at getawaytoday.com/castletalk. That's where we get a little bit of commission to keep this podcast going and help share Disneyland and castle tips with you.